Hello, hello. It sounds fine to me. Can you hear it in there? Good. Okay. Good.
I hurt my leg. I'm going to use injured person privilege.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sit with like this.
Oh, how did you hurt your leg?
It's dumb. I was dancing.
Mm-hmm. That's not dumb. Oh, okay.
Halloween. I was sober, dead sober. Well, I had half a Sazerac.
Mm-hmm.
And I jumped and felt a pop.
No,
Yeah, so
that's terrible.
I pulled my calf. But it's going to heal on its own. I just have to wait. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I take it? Oh, you're fine. There's money. All right. No worries. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to tell you a couple of things about Alembic before we start. So, welcome to Alembic. I'm talking through this microphone because this class, in addition to going out in this room, is also live streamed. That's the camera. Hello, camera. However, the people on the live stream can only hear things that go through the microphones. So if I stop talking through this microphone, they will not be able to hear me, which means that if you have questions that you want to ask that you don't want to go on the internet, they won't. But Zachary's answers will. So just be aware of that if you want to ask some kind of very personal Zen related question, you're free to do so. What else do I want to tell you? This week is a quieter week than usual at Alembic. We have a couple of movement classes tomorrow, and we have Chandra Easton doing her Vajrayana class tomorrow, which is meditation, movement, and mantra. And then the rest of the week is very quiet, and then we're back in action next week. Okay, good to see you all. Without further ado, Zachary.
Thank you. Well, let's sit a bit. So here's what I'd say. It can help to feel sort of planted in balance. So if it helps to do that, to put support cushions under your knees, so that the interesting thing about this posture, or or even more the full lotus posture, is that it really equalizes the downward pressure on your sit bones and your knees, which is kind of great, actually. So it feels solid and balanced. It's very easy. I mean, you can try this. Rock yourself right and left. Find the place where find the place that's in between where gravity grabs you on the right and where gravity grabs you on the left, and that's the middle in that plane. And then the same thing forward and backwards, right? Find the place that's in the middle. When you're there, you're upright and kind of relaxed, largely just because of modest tension in the large muscles in your body, right? If you lean forward, obviously if you really exaggerate leaning forward, all of a sudden these muscles have to engage more. That's fine for a few minutes, and it's fine. And particularly, if it's fine if you're not leaning too much. But interestingly, over time, that additional strain adds up, right? So it's worth kind of bringing yourself to a place where your seat feels balanced and solid, and anything you can do to make that feel true is good, right? So then adjust the tilt of your pelvis so that the muscles of your lower back and your lower stomach muscles are kind of balanced out. And also, if you'll notice, like if you tilt your pelvis really far forward, there starts to be some strain in here. If you tilt it really far back, there's this sort of uncomfortable feeling in your sort of, iliac region, basically. So you want to relieve both of those and have a pelvic tilt that's sort of in the sweet spot there, right? You can imagine there's this place right down below your navel, a couple inches below your navel, and right in the middle of your body that in Japanese they call the hara, right? So you can imagine that there's a pillar planted in your hara. You can maybe tighten your lower stomach muscles and the muscles of your pelvic floor a little bit around your hara, so it's like a platform. You can imagine there's a pillar standing there that provides a kind of gentle upward pressure on your sternum, right? Which in turn allows your shoulders to float back a little bit and allows your head to float back a little bit, so you're upright but not straining it, just upright and kind of relaxed, right? The any hand location is good. If you put your hands too far out, it's going to be pulling on your shoulders. If you um, if you clasp them way down in your lap, similarly, it puts pressure on these muscles. The canonical hand posture is you put your left palm on top of your right palm, you wrap your fingers around in a big circle with your thumb tips lightly touching. You place that right about here with your fingers gently pressed up against the lower abdomen, and your thumb tips right around the level of your navel. And there's a sweet spot for that too. Imagine that your joints particularly your arm joints, are full of air and are sort of spacious, right? So close your mouth and your teeth and rest your tongue gently against the front roof of your mouth. Open your eyes and let your gaze fall in front of you in a relaxed way. And once you're in that posture, just bring a little tension and your direct attention to your hara and breathe all the way out. Your breath is all the way out. Just wait until your diaphragm calls for it, and then let go of all the tension. Let your breath come in and fill your body. And do that 3, maybe 5 times. And then let your breath settle into its natural rate and depth, and just let it be what it is. And attend to what's happening. We'll sit for a bit. So as you're sitting, obviously this is a dualistic generalization, but you could argue that there's two major modes of engagement for the attention. And one is attention to the just broad, receptive, unloaded attention to the sensations and thoughts that are arising into perception right now, and then letting them go, just like as though you're holding a small pile of sawdust in your hand, and you just open it and it blows away. Gone. And then, lo and behold, you have another lump of sawdust, right? And the other one, there's this kind of tangle of thinking and emoting and narrating and signifying, planning, etc. And that can feel quite different. Often there's a kind of gravity to that mode, and it pulls in your senses in some way, so that the sensations from your body and to a certain extent even your awareness of the details of your thought gets clouded, and there's this kind of, it's almost like this kind of darkness in it involved, like you've fallen into a self-gravitational, at least gray hole, right? Not quite black. And those two modes kind of give way to each other in this natural cycle, but it's worth noting for yourself where you are whenever you can notice it, where you are in that cycle, and what it feels like. Is it bright and clear and straightforward? Is it drawn in by the gravity of self-construction? Just to notice. Don't judge it. It's not a matter for judgment or struggle. It's just a matter of attending to where you are right now. So just watch that. See what you see. Hear what you hear. Sometimes the moment of returning to awareness is a moment of recognition. Our patterns of thought are so repetitious that it can start to feel like, walking along with a bunch of people in your class that you've been going to school with for your entire life. To let that moment of recognition settle and bring up a kind of curiosity and um, compassionate acceptance of just who this person is that prompted this being is that prompted my return to awareness. What was it about that thought or that pattern that prompted this moment of recognition? Just to recognize, acknowledge it, and be interested in it for as long as it sticks around. Often when we do that, the thought event or the preoccupation will diffuse exactly like a handful of sawdust in a wind. But sometimes it doesn't. Either way is fine. So let's stand up. So I think we're going to do a little walking meditation to loosen up our legs. So, kind of stand with your knees slightly unlocked, and again, kind of try to have the same feel in your back and neck and shoulders that you had while sitting. Right, eyes open and down, mouth closed, and relaxed. Then everyone turn to your left. And on the out breath, plant your left foot right out in front of your right one a little bit, not for far. As you breathe out, transfer the weight to that foot, and then on the in-breath, lift your other foot. No, you don't have to pick it up. Just lift it up to your, your kind of the ball of your foot, and then on the out breath, plant it in front, and that's all. I'm just going to walk around in a big circle for a bit. You'll notice that your attention is a little different in this mode than it is when sitting, but not so different. Just to keep your attention in the slow, deliberate movements of the body. The sensation of planting your foot and the way the foot spreads out to really take in the ground slowly. Maybe differences in texture and temperature of the floor. Just to take it all in. Notice the way the breath and the walking interact. It's like they're yoked together. All right, well, that's good. Let's go sit back down. Hmm. So before we move on, does anybody have any questions about sitting posture, walking meditation, what's supposed to be happening with your mind? Any details or comments or you know complaints about any of it? Questions? Go ahead.
The walking meditation was interesting for me because one of my legs.
Yeah.
And so I got to watch all of the sort of like more neutral sensations or like temperature in the room and the feeling of the weight shifting. And then I also got to watch the way I responded. Like I definitely have a preference for being on this leg.
Yeah,
versus
totally.
this leg. So it was very juicy.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, I have a completely destroyed left foot, right? It's bad, and it's been bad for 20 something years. It has a big titanium plate and a whole bunch of stainless steel screws holding it together. And so my kinhin is very asymmetrical. It's like, like I bring the weight down on my right foot, and everything feels kind of great and smooth and all that sort of thing. And then I plant my left foot, and the minute I start transferring my weight there, I can feel my balance like going off and stuff like that. It's amazing to watch, actually.
I was noticing myself be all like drama queen too. Like there were these times where I was like totally overcompensating, and then I could hear myself tell myself like, "Your leg's basically fine," and the next step would be like pretty much fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, every now and again, my left foot performs beautifully, and I'm like, "Wow, how did that even happen?" Right? Yeah. Anything else? Cool. Well, so I was going to talk about another koan today, the one after the last two, the third case in the Blue Cliff record, which goes like this. So I'll tell you the koan, explain it a little bit, say the koan again, and then what I'd like you to do in the process is listen and notice what happens, what comes up, what jumps out at you, what the experience is of listening to it and taking it in. And really anything is good, right? But after I recite the koan a couple times and explain a couple things, I'm going to ask you what came up. So it's a short one, and it says Master Ma was sick, and the temple superintendent comes down to visit him, and he goes, "So, how's your health?" And Master Ma says, "Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha," and that's the whole story. It's short. And there's a couple of things to explain. So Master Ma was this, by all accounts, tremendously powerful, athletic, healthy guy, and his name is Matsu Dao Yi, which I think means horse master, and then Dao Yi is just one way, right? Nice. But he everybody says things about him, like there are these ancient books. He lived in all through most of the 8th century in Tang Dynasty China, and there are a number of records that were collected of the teachers of Tang Dynasty China, and in the one that was collected about him, this story occurs, but also it's they're constantly talking about how he's kind of moves like a tiger, and is fierce, and so on and so forth. So he's lying in bed sick, and the way I understand this story is he wasn't just sick; he was actually actively dying. Right. So that's when the superintendent came to see him. And the other thing is the whole sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha thing. There's a text called "The Names of Buddha" that has literally hundreds, maybe even like 1,000 names of Buddhas, right? That all have a particular characteristic or set of characteristics or something like that. And in that it says that sun-faced Buddha lives for 1,800 years, right? And moon-faced Buddha lives exactly a day and a night. And they're both, when they die, they're their lives come to complete fruition, and they melt into the fabric of the universe. Right? So anyway, that's sun-faced Buddha and moon-faced Buddha, and that's what Matsu said when the temple superintendent asked him about his health. Right? So I'll say it again. So Master Ma was sick, and the temple superintendent came to ask about his health, and he said, sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. So what comes up? And like I said, anything is okay, including I don't get any of it or whatever, right? So what do you think? Just sing it out.
Feels short and long.
Yeah.
Like a constant death and then like a repeating death. Or
Yeah, that's good. Short and long, right? Because it's got that sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha thing that has to do with continuation and not continuation, right? Yeah, that's good. Who else? Well, I'll talk about it a little more, and if anything comes up while I'm talking, just interrupt. So, it's easy to think about the sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha thing as being kind of a, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, or come see, come saw, or something like that, right? And there might be a little bit of that flavor in it, but I'm pretty sure that's not exactly what Master Ma meant, right? When you hear sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha, it's easy to find yourself thinking, I want to be sun-faced Buddha, all shiny, lives for 1,800 years, uh, probably looks good on a pedestal and so on and so forth, right? And what they call this in the Zen school is building a golden Buddha, right? And everybody does it. There's this. So on Sunday, yesterday, I hosted a half-day sitting at San Francisco Zen Center, and what we do is everybody comes in, and before we all sit down, we stand around in a circle, and everyone kind of go around the circle, and everyone expresses a kind of wish or intention for the day, right? And some of these people have a decent amount of sitting experience, and some of them have very little, right? But what you notice when you sit down to teach people to sit, and you ask them to express their wish or intention, it often has to do with wanting to somehow change the mind, right? So that it's quieter, less chaotic, so that things are more clear, so that the experience of just walking around the world is more like how I imagined it, right? More how I would like it to be. And all of those wishes are valid and sort of unimpeachably positive, right? Of course, that's what we want, right? If the fundamental truths of Buddhism are that life feels unsatisfactory, and that unsatisfactoriness arises out of something fundamental to the human condition, right? And there's a way out, right? Then yeah, everybody wants the way out, right? That's what we'd like. But it turns out that thing that's fundamental to the human condition, that the Buddha in the talk where he lays out this sort of axiomatic framework for Buddhism, right? That thing that's fundamental are grasping and aversion, the way in which we feed our own dissatisfaction by imagining an ideal moment, an ideal future, an ideal self, etc., and then navigating in the direction of that in a way that's guaranteed not to 100% succeed. That is as much tangled up with, by the time if we take on this practice of, which is intended to produce a kind of liberation from suffering, right? If we take that on sincerely and wholeheartedly, right? Nonetheless, that aspect of the human condition, that tendency to find the present circumstance unsatisfactory, and to navigate, right, also gets tangled up with practice. And so our practice is, if we really address it honestly, our practice is this opportunity to study in the context of something that we really care about, right? That the whole panoply of symptoms of the human condition, and in particular our personal, array of symptoms, right? The miraculous thing now is that it turns out that kind of study of the particular the particulars of our version of the human condition, let's put it that way, is also the gateway to freedom, right? So another well, I'll leave that aside. It turns out that essentially the disease and the medicine are the same, and so in that context, what you find is that yes, sometimes your experience is bright and clear and feels timeless, right? And sometimes it's like you're groping in the dark, and everything feels momentary and evanescent, right? And the thing that Matsu is stressing is that both of those are equally realization, right? To be in the middle of all the particulars of your version of the human condition, and engaged in this way is being awake, and whether it feels like the sun or the moon is not the point. Whether it feels like it could go on forever, or whether it feels like it could die tomorrow. Neither of those is the point. The request is simply to be as wholeheartedly present and curious for and about what's actually happening, and to treat it in this way that brings up a kind of appreciation and even delight in the just the fact and act of being alive. That's the request and the reward, right? Simultaneously of practice. And so what that means is that in sickness and in health, living and dying, etc., in all those cases, the rewards are boundless, right? And the experience, even experiences that are actually quite difficult and unpleasant, like for Master Ma, presumably being sick unto death, don't have to, as you were saying, produce this kind of dramatic struggle, right? They're not a subject for dramatic struggle. So sun face Buddha, moon face Buddha. What time is it? So does anybody have any questions about that or comments?
Seems like there's, I mean, maybe I'm just on my leg thing still, but it seems like there's something in there also about not having preferences, like something really deep about not having preferences.
Yeah.
Not only just not preferring to build the sun face Buddha or the moon face Buddha, but not preferring like health over sickness or like
Yeah.
death. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so the Xin Ming, which is this seminal pre-Zen text that got folded into the Zen canon, that was written by essentially, well, actually nobody knows who read it, but it's generally attributed to the third Zen patriarch, right? Anyway, Sekito Kisen, I think in Japanese. Starts out exactly like that. It says, the way is easy. Just avoid picking and choosing. Right. And the koan we studied last week, Jiaozhou quotes that and then says, but the minute you open your mouth, you're picking and choosing, basically. Right. He says, so what do you say? Do you preserve anything or not? Right. And a monk gets up and says, so what do you preserve? And Zhao goes, I don't know either. and then he says, okay, since you don't know, how can you say you're not clear? And Zhao says, just go sit down. Basically, right? So yes, absolutely, that's right. So you could argue that if, as somebody else once said, then the least like or dislike arises, the mind is lost in confusion, and the way is as distant as heaven from earth. Right? That's what he said. And you kind of can't help yourself, right? Because we're signifier and symbol using beings whose entire interaction with the world is mediated by these significant symbols and concepts and so on and so forth, right? All of which have, whether we realize it or not, emotional underpinnings and preferences, right? Like if you really don't have any preferences, like maybe I've already talked about this. There's this book called Descartes' Error. Did I mention this? And essentially it's about the fallacy of the notion of pure reason, and it's a neuroscience book, right? And it holds up a lot of cases of people who have lost the ability one way or another to attach preferences and emotions to their thinking, right? And you'd think it'd be great. they could go through life and just reason their way through life, but it totally doesn't work that way. Like this one example in the book, this scientist is working with a guy who was brain damaged in some way, so that his emotional life was pretty inaccessible to him, right? And he would do things like put down a few pens on the table and said, "Oh, I need you to sign this document," right? And the guy would just, because he couldn't pull off enough juice behind any particular choice to be able to do anything with it, right? It's kind of amazing. We're wired that way, right? So the question is, how can we live with that and hold it in such a way that it's not a source of suffering, right? And that's the both the conundrum and also the actual activity of moment to moment practice that sets us free, basically. But yeah, really, totally good point, right? What else? Good. Well, we have a few more minutes. Let's sit for a few more minutes, shall we? One way to think about it is to think of it as listening with your whole body, right? Like all of your sensory modalities have a different sort of profile, right? Your visual system really wants to have a specific focus and to be, to be responsible for navigation, right? For going places, for recognition. Your proprioceptive sense is the foundation of your awareness, and at the same time, it's constantly trying to tell you how you're doing with keeping your body upright and unstressed, right? But your sense of hearing has this quality. It's mostly just receptive. You can actually focus on a particular sound, but that focus is still pretty soft, right? It's like with hearing, it's almost all peripheral and incidental, right? And yet at the same time, tremendously important. So to listen in this curious and relaxed way to the whole sensorium and the mind itself, right? And in each case, when something arises, to turn toward it, right? To take it in and then let it go. So I may have already read this in here, but I thought it applied. So I thought even if I had, I'd read it again. So it says, I thought I'd climb the mountain by the last light of day and descend by moonlight. But the moon was shy. It took a long time to rise. That then played it, hiding behind a veil of clouds and bursting forth suddenly, lighting up the path. Such unearthly beauty, so much stumbling along in the dark with my ghostly companions.